would definitely agree. It all starts with writing. If you could have the best voice in the world, you could be the best looking person in the world, but if you can't create a sentence to save your life, you will not have a job. And that's what you learn here, is to actually to be a good writer. And then all of the equipment that you need in the industry is here, and you learn on actual professional equipment. So when you actually get to your first job, and it's the same thing that you were using back in college.
There were times where I would spend 10 hours in the studio here at CSUN. Editing was really big. I think it was DVC Pro back then, and when I was given my first job in Grand Junction, they were shocked. I was one of the few reporters that knew how to edit. A lot of colleges don't provide that type of technology, so I was lucky to know that. And also, the writing is really important. You just, you're free here to piece together a story, and it was interesting to me to see how I would piece a story together and how I would improve throughout the months, and then I would test myself once the storytelling is there on timing, because I knew in the real world you had to be fast. And so I would come with this perfect product here at school, but it took me 24 hours to do it. So then eventually I tried to work on the timing, and you just piece together all of the elements of storytelling in a quick manner, and that's when you gain your skill and take that out in the real world.
I do want to say, especially for students right now, one of the big things is you shoot your own stories here. That's going to be a very big thing coming out and going to the smaller markets, because the way the news industry is transitioning right now in small to medium and even in large markets now, not Los Angeles, so to say, although I don't know.
They're touching on it, and New York is.
It's a little,
right.
It's a touchy subject, but
it is.
One-man band multimedia journalism is the new journalism. As the reporter, you are shooting your stories on your own. You're going out there. You need to be a photographer and you need to be a reporter at the same time. So getting those skills, because you have to shoot your stories here by yourself, are going to help you far down the road, since that's the direction that it is going.
Because even if you do go out in the field and, in your first job, it's you and a photographer, well, while the photographer's shooting the story and you're interviewing the person, you're shooting, like what he's doing in Santa Barbara, you're shooting stuff for the web. Because nothing is just one place anymore. A story that I do for radio, it needs to be on the web, shortly after that. A story that he does on TV and a story that she'll do for TV. All of it ends up on the web in some way, shape, or form. Or we might have to do a blog and write notes on the side. It's not just one medium anymore.
And because you have bigger markets, unfortunately, for various reasons, going to the one-man band, or at least testing it out, at least you have growing, advancing technology to make it easier. When I started as a one-man band, it was 3/4-inch deck. I could barely carry it. And so now technology is so far advanced. You can, in the duopoly where I work, we have in a live truck, it has 3 different technological devices to allow us to go live, from a mast on the truck to a webcam position to show live where we're heading, to a laptop computer, which in a sense is kind of like using Skype or iChat, where I can take the laptop out of the truck, walk over to a fire line, show people up close and personal, but I'm still safe because we didn't have to raise the mast, which can get you in a dangerous situation. But there's so many different technological advances for you to not only go live, but make it easier for you to do it on your own. So if the industry is going to go that way, at least it'll be easier and more practical.
All right, for my next question, after being a reporter or a producer for several years, do you think you've become desensitized to even some of the more tragic news that occurs?
Myself, yes, a little, but a little for me. It's still, some of the news still gets me when we do have the any type of murder, any type of death. It still does get to me. And now when I walk up on the scene of something, does it bother me as much anymore that we've seen it? No, it doesn't bother me as much. But when I go home at night, I still think about it. It's still in the back of my mind. So it hasn't gone away for me just yet. Yeah,
it's unfortunate that that bad news makes news, but it's still unusual. That's the thing, is murder makes news because it's still very rare for people to be killed. And because of that, because we report on some pretty nasty stuff sometimes, you do kind of have to desensitize yourself, and there's some you're going to learn some newsroom humor that it might not sit well with you right off the bat, but if you're going to want to make it in this business, you're going to have to laugh at some pretty serious stuff. You have to make jokes at some pretty nasty stuff, and then just leave it in the newsroom, because that's if you take it home with you, it's going to be tough, and you have to desensitize yourself simply because there's some bad stuff going on out there, but sometimes it still does get you. Some of the especially nasty stuff.
I mean, there are images that I still can't get out of my head, and there's times where, I mean, essentially you're showing up on the worst day of someone's life, but you have to tell their story in a compassionate way, as if you were living through it. And I mean, just, you know, last week and just last night, the story is still with me. It's because these families open up to you, and you have such a big responsibility because you have their tragedy on your shoulders, and you need to do them justice. So a lot of times you put aside the horrific details to just justify, you know, what's going on in front of you, because you want to do a good job. And, you know, if images stay cemented in your mind, or it takes a while to get, you know, something out of your head, you know, sometimes you laugh it off, sometimes we make inappropriate jokes. A lot of police officers do that, but you have to, and that's what people don't understand about people in our business. It's a way to cope, because we don't see a therapist after, but we see things that would warrant anyone else to go see one. You know, so you have to be, and I tell all people about to get into the industry, you have to be, in a sense, I don't know if you guys agree, but to some respects, mentally and emotionally strong. You have to be that way. My first live shot ever in Grand Junction was a horrible tragedy. My first live shot was an accidental death, and I was 5 feet away. You know, and a lot of times it's children, or it's things that you have to cope with in that moment. And a lot of times we show up and people are grieving, sometimes even on your shoulder, and you can't break, but you still want to be compassionate. So you're constantly balancing time that you have to tell the story before the newscast, getting the story, doing them justice, you know, maintaining control within yourself and your environment. Because again, sometimes the environment is dangerous, you know, and it's still active. So you're balancing a lot, but you learn to do it, and it becomes easy to you, unfortunately.
Matt, did you have another question to follow up?
Yeah, I have one last question.
Okay.
Journalists are known for working pretty odd hours. Do late shifts ever interfere with your social life?
I think right now it's making mine better.
Social life.
What's social life?
I haven't had a social life in a couple years now.
It was tough. It's tough to start.
Yeah, especially in the smaller markets. I work about 60 hours a week, 60 plus, and getting a social life at all, it's kind of out of the question. I don't do a whole lot. I sleep when I can. When you work the morning show, especially the morning shift, and you're up at midnight, you're at work by 1, you're asleep by 4 or 5 in the afternoon, it throws you a little bit on what's going on, but I think the trade-off of doing what you love doing every day is worth the social hours. Plus, you make it up. I think as your career goes on, things change, and maybe you have different wants. But especially, at least for me at this point, social life really isn't there, but I love doing what I'm doing, so it's worth it to me.
Yeah, my first few years in the business, it was in Fresno, where there is really no social life to begin with. But then I'm waking up at 3 in the morning and going to sleep at 6 at night. And so there really is no nightlife, no social life, but you try to find other people who are in the same situation. Become, and I don't know if either of you can speak to this, but you become very good friends with people at work, because they understand you. They're working the same shift you are, and they can go out at the same time. They can do what more normal people do. Normal people at 7 o'clock at night. We do at noon.